Hello, and thank you for joining us for today's message. I'm Eric, the lead pastor of South Mountain Community Church. Thank you for taking just a bit of your time to be with us today. We exist for one reason, and that's to help as many people as possible take their next step towards becoming fully devoted and fully delighted followers of Jesus Christ. And I know that for so many people, church and even religion can be messy and oh so complicated, but it doesn't have to be that way. Here you can belong before you believe. So our hope is that your first visit with us is enjoyable, meaningful, and unlike the church experiences of your past. We also think that the best way to experience delight is with others in person. So SMCC is about more than just a Sunday sermon. We have 5 locations for you to choose from where you can connect with people in authentic community. We want every message you hear to engage your head, your heart, and your hands for a life of full delight. So with all of that in mind, enjoy today's message. Well, hey, good to see you. Really glad that you're here. If we haven't met, I'm Eric. I get to serve as one of the pastors around here. And before we dive into today's subject, I just want to say that 2023 around here at SMCC across our 5 campuses, it was incredible. And I don't know to what degree you were able to participate or what next steps you took last year, but I hope you were able to participate in some way and really just experience all that is happening here, all the life change, all the community, all the growth, which means as we look into 2024 that, there's a lot to come. And I hope that you know that you can participate at your speed when you're ready, but that when you're all ready to take a next step, we are here. And I'm really excited for all that's gonna happen, all the growth, all the fruit that's gonna come here among us over this next year. Now today, we begin a brand new series for a brand new year. And this series is all about the biblical connections between our spiritual lives and our physical bodies. Now, I wanna start with something that's just so basic, but really lets you know that this series is for everybody. And I wanna start with this. The series is for everybody because everybody has a body. Everybody has a body, all right? You can remember that today. And I know it's so obvious, but let's just really remember this. Go ahead and just blink your eyes a few times, like you're here, you can do that. Go ahead and clench your fists from wherever you are. Punch your neighbor, they're gonna feel their body. Just kidding, don't really do that. Some of you are like, yes, he told me I could. We all have a body, and so this series, Body Theology, it is for every one of us. And I know that point is so obvious, but what I'm just trying to say is that we all have these complex structures that are a core part of who we are. And our bodies, they are intricate, and they are powerful, and they are fragile, and it can be so confusing what we are to do with these bodies. What's the purpose of the body that we have? Now, here's the thing that I find interesting, and this will hopefully spark our interest to lean in to today's content. Either somebody or nobody told you the purpose of your body. I mean, I've been thinking about my own life, and I had a sex ed class once in middle school, but other than that, I haven't heard a lot about what I'm to do with my body and what my body is for. And that's probably true of you. Either somebody or nobody told you what to do with your body. And so if you're like most people, you're kind of left guessing, you're following cultural clues, you're just following what feels good. And in that, we're trying to figure out what to do with our body. So we're all very familiar. We're all very familiar with having a body, but knowing the purpose and knowing the meaning of our body can be rather mysterious and rather confusing. Now, oversimplified narratives about what our bodies are for, well, they exist everywhere. I mean, every day, either indirectly or directly, something or someone is pitching to us an idea about our bodies, telling us what we should do with our body, how we should view our body, what we should think about our body, what we should put in our body, how we should shape our body, craft our body, what to do with this thing called the human body. Every day we are faced with all of that. And here's what you already know. There are so many disagreements in our world about that. Disagreements around physicality, and sexuality, and gender, and marriage, and about a million other things. So I felt like it was time for us to talk about it here. I felt like it was time for us to ask a few very important questions in the hopes of finding truth and clarity around our bodies. And so for the next 4 weeks, we're gonna ask 4 really important questions. 4 questions that will guide the next 4 weeks. I'll give those questions to you now so you know exactly where we're headed. The first question is this: who does my body belong to and what is my body for? I know, technically 2 questions, but they fit very well together, okay? And this is today. This is the question we're gonna process today. Who does my body belong to and what is my body for? Next week, in part 2 of the series, we're gonna ask this question: how do I honor Jesus if I want to? How do I honor Jesus with my body? In week 3, we're gonna ask this question: what does it mean to be a sexed, embodied human? Not a sexy human, a sexed embodied human, okay? We're gonna ask that question. And then in week 4, we're gonna ask this question: well, what happens next to my body? I mean, after this body takes its last breath, then what happens to my body? And through all of this, we are going to study existence. We're gonna study being. This is called ontology, and that's what this series is about. And by the end, it's my deep hope that you can walk away after these 4 weeks with a biblical anthropology. Anthropology is really the study of human beings, and my undergrad is actually in anthropology, and so this is something I've been passionate about for quite some time. And so by the end, we're gonna arrive, it's my hope, at a biblical anthropology. It'll take us 4 weeks to get there, but it's gonna take all 4 of those weeks to build out this biblical paradigm. Now, as we start, I just want you to know I have an agenda. I wanna put all my cards on the table so you know exactly where I'm coming from and exactly what it is that I hope for each of us in this series. And in fact, my agenda comes from a desire that the Apostle Paul had for his friends in Corinth, who also had a bunch of questions about the human body. And in 1 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 20, the Apostle Paul says this, and this is my agenda for us: you were bought at a price. You were bought at a price, therefore honor God with your body. So my agenda is that you would see the price that Jesus paid for you with his body, that you would see how valuable you are, how treasured you are, the extent to which he went to the cross for you, the extent to which he loves you, and that you would see what he did with his body on the cross for you, and you would decide the proper response is to give your body over to him, to honor him with your body. That is my agenda in this series, because I'm convinced that is a way to peace. That's the way to peace. And peace is at the heart of this series. It's really our series thesis. Our series thesis, or really the overarching idea to the series, is this: when you embrace God's truth for your body, you will be at peace with your body. When you embrace God's truth for your body, you will be at peace with your body. And what I mean by that is there exists today in many people in this room, this incongruency between what we feel on the inside and what we see on the outside. And inside of that incongruency, there's turmoil and there is chaos. There is no peace. There's this incongruency between maybe our mind or our soul or our physical body, or this incongruency between the desires that we have and how we act with our body, or this incongruency between our beliefs and our behaviors. And inside all of that, there is a lack of peace. I heard a stat recently that said 90% of Americans are unhappy to some degree with their bodies, which means the normative experience for most people around here, most people in here today, is this discontent, this normative discontent with the physical body. But it doesn't have to be that way. In fact, when we honor God with our bodies, it leads to peace. And it's that type of peace I want for all of us. Because regardless of what you believe about Bible or God or even your body right now, I would guess you would like that type of peace with how you view your body, how you think about your body, how your soul and your body come together. I would guess you would like peace to describe all of that. I want that for you. God wants that for you. And so that's where we're headed in this series. So with all of that in mind, we are into today's 2-part question. And once again, it's this: who does my body belong to and what is my body for? That's what we're talking about today. And I just want to let you know there are really 4 options, 4 main options for this. And there might be more, but I think they all flow into one of these categories, okay? And here are the 4 options, really 4 answers, 4 possible answers to the question of who does the body belong to and what's the body for. The first one is this: my body belongs to me, it's for whatever I want. And I would guess that if you asked most people, they would land here. I mean, this is sort of the assumed approach today. Eric, who's my body belong to? Of course it belongs to me. What's my body for? It's for whatever I want. That's option one. Option two is this: my body belongs to them, whoever them might be. My body belongs to them, some community, some tribe, some group of people, an individual, a cultural expression of body, whatever it might be. My body belongs to them. It's for whatever they want. Okay, the third option is this: my body belongs to no one. It's for nothing. We'll talk about that. And then there's the fourth option: my body belongs to God, and it is for imaging him. It's for imaging him. And so today what I want to do is explain each of these positions, highlight the pitfall of each of the positions, and then wrap up by sharing with you what I think is the most beautiful position to hold and maintain. The most beautiful, majestic position to subscribe to, the type of position that will lead to purpose, lead to peace, lead to clarity, the alignment of your life and the alignment of what God would desire for your life. So, with all of that in mind, let's get into the first one. My body belongs to me. It's for whatever I want, okay? This is a very common approach. Perhaps you might think this way right now. I think a lot of people think this way. It's very common. And the idea is this: the body is basically a playground. Play however you want. Just don't get hurt. It's like, don't fall off the slide and hit your head. It's a playground. Play however you would like to play. Do what you want, with who you want, when you want, as much as you want. Because after all, it is just a playground and you are free to play as you please. Which really is just a way of saying pursue every desire you feel within. Maximize your pleasure, minimize anything that would be difficult, any type of discipline, any type of pain. And through all of that, you will really be able to experience what your body was designed for, because after all, it was designed for pleasure. It was designed for you. So the more good food, the more good drink, the more entertainment, the more pleasure, the better. Resist anything that's the opposite of that, because that sounds no fun at all. At the end of the day, your body is a tool to your own desires, okay? We are a happy accident, so have as much fun as possible until you can't, okay? This is the idea behind this approach. Now, let's talk about it for a little bit. Are there any pitfalls with this approach? Well, I think there are many pitfalls. Ultimately, I think it leads to chaos, and I don't think it leads to peace. I think it leads to more pain over time. I think it's non-livable. I think it dies by its own logic, and at the end of the day, I actually think it's anti-science. And I thought, in the few minutes that we have, how could I explain this? What would be the easiest way to show all of that? Well, we could talk about a few things. We could talk about, well, which desires or pleasures in me should I pursue? Because they actually contradict, so that's pretty confusing. But I thought we would just talk about it in terms of limits for a moment. Our bodies have these limits that for many of us, we don't like or we don't want to live with, but limits we're stuck with. You ever been on a road trip and you were trying to beat the time on Apple Maps, and you were in a hurry? I always drive and try to beat the time. I want to lower it. When I leave my house, I type it in. Today, coming here, the snowstorm, it said I'd be here at 8:05. I was like, I'm gonna beat that time, If you've ever been there, you kind of know this pursuit. I'm after something. But if you've ever been on a road trip and had to use the restroom, and you're like, I don't want to pull over, and your wife's like, pull over, honey, the kids got to go. You're like, I'm not pulling over. All right, I've had quite a few fights in my family about this. When do we pull over? When the car needs to stop or when the people need to stop, okay? It's a real discussion in my family. If you've ever had to pull over when you didn't want to pull over, you know that your body has limits that you must submit to. You are a subject to. The body has a whole bunch of limits. And we just got to ask, where'd those limits come from? Came from someone, or those limits came from something. We need to submit to them. And here's the fascinating thing. The more I resist those limits and reject those limits, the less of a body I have to play with. If you pursue this approach to its logical end, you will eventually kill yourself in time and have no body to play with anymore. So I think this dies by its own logic. It's inconsistent. It's non-livable. Now, the Apostle Paul in the first century was dealing with all of this because the people of Corinth, they dealt with all of this. And he makes this observation. It's very, very important. He says, I have the right to do anything, you say. I have the right to do anything. This is in quotes because this was a common mantra of the day. It was a cultural expression. I can do whatever I want. I have the right to do anything, you say. He says, yeah, but not everything. Not everything is beneficial. He's saying just because you feel like you have the right to do something doesn't mean it's right to do it. Just because you're free to do it doesn't mean that that you should. Over time, these things that you can do might not be beneficial for you. And our bodily limits help us understand that someone or something placed these limits within us, and we need to respect those. So if you ever feel like you have to sleep, if you ever feel like you have to eat, if you're ever sick and you don't want to be, which is kind of me all day yesterday, but I'm here because I was not going to miss this. If you ever feel like those limits are at place in your life, you should ask, where did those limits come from? I'm not as free as I think I am. I must submit to the limits that exist within me. And so this freedom to pursue whatever we want with the body as a playground, it's a bit of an illusion. And these limits are placed there in our lives by design. And if that's so, then our body can't just be a playground. This idea, it dies from the inside. And also we know this, discipline allows us to enjoy things all the more. Over the holiday break, I had some family in town. We went to one of those rock climbing gyms, Momentum. All right, it's a cool place, I guess. I went there. Listen, never been there before. I don't discipline my upper body at all. You can probably tell. Got pastor arms up here, you know. Did I have fun at the rock gym? No. I was sore for a week after that. I couldn't even move my fingers, you know. But my brother-in-law, who goes all the time, who disciplines himself to actually do that type of thing, enjoys it far more than I possibly could. We know that good discipline allows us to enjoy good things. All right? So as we put all this together, I just don't think this position adds up. Now this brings us to our second position. And the second position that we're going to look at today is this: my body belongs to them. It's for whatever they want. Now you might think, Eric, that sounds like a ludicrous position. I mean, who would ever hold that? Well, most of human history held that position and saw the world that way. I mean, in most cultures, here's what the reality was with the body. The wife's body belonged to the husband, and the husband's body belonged to the master or the state or the government or the emperor or the deities of the culture. And they all got to say what happened to somebody else's body down the line. It was only until the Enlightenment that we thought we can look within and decide who gets to say what with our bodies. Most of human history, it was this way. Someone else said what goes with your body. Now, by the way, in a sneaky way, this still exists today. If you feel like you have to do something with your body sexually, or maybe cosmetically, or in some other way to get someone to approve of you, then in some way you are submitting your body to what they say about you. It still exists today. John Mayer once put out a song, which I heard he doesn't like anymore, but let's just use this song for illustrative purposes. He had this song where the lyric was this: your body is a wonderland. Do you guys remember this? Your body is a wonderland. I'll use my hands. What he's saying is this: your body is actually my playground. It's my wonderland, and I'm going to enjoy it with my body. I will use my body to enjoy your body. It is my wonderland. He's speaking to the same idea. Your body belongs to someone else. It's for whatever they want. Now, we don't have to think about this very long to discover this sounds awful and miserable. No one would want to live in this position, because after all, this is slavery, isn't it? It really is. Now, interestingly enough, this is exactly what the Apostle Paul picks up on next in his argument in chapter 6. He says this: I have the right to do anything you say, but not everything is beneficial. We've already read that. And then he says, I have the right to do anything, but I will not be mastered by anything. He's saying that as you give your body away in these types of ways, over time, it might be mastered. You might be enslaved to something. And he says, look, you don't want to live that way. And we don't. So this brings us to our third option. My body belongs to no one. My body really is for nothing. Now let's break this one down just a little bit. In this view, the body is just a flesh machine. Here's a phrase for you. The body is just a juicy robot, okay? It's a juicy robot. It's a cage. It's a shell. It's a taxi that you hopped in at birth, but really, it's not you. This is the approach here. Inside of this approach, the idea is this: that there's a real you that exists inside of you that may or may not match the body that carries you. This is the idea here. And inside of this, if there's an incongruency between what you feel on the inside, the real you on the inside, and what you see when you look in the mirror on the outside, if there's an incongruency, the idea here is you would always go with your mind over your body, psychology over biology. That is the idea, which we are going to unpack in week 3 of this series. But today I simply want to share this concept and let you know that it's very, very popular. In fact, it's growing rapidly in popularity. Now, there's a word for this separation between material and immaterial, or soul and body. In the first century, it was called Gnosticism. That really the physical is bad, the spiritual and immaterial is actually good. And the more you can separate the two, the better off you'll be. Get rid of the physical evil, pursue the spiritual good, and you will be happy. Separate the two. And I think in this view today, that the real you exists in you, separate from the body around you, this is modern day Gnosticism. But if we think about it for just 1 second, there is a word that we use to describe the separation of soul and body. We call that death, don't we? We call that death. Now, the question we have to ask is there any good evidence to believe that these things are forever separated? Or is there evidence to the contrary that seems that they connect together or are united? So what would be the pitfall of this view? Well, the pitfall of this view, I think, is that it doesn't actually match reality. It doesn't match reality. Whenever we go with a position that doesn't match facts or doesn't match reality, we're on unstable ground. And we might say, I don't know if that's the case, but I'm gonna guess that this is better with something as serious as my physical body. I don't want us to guess. I want us to go off what's best. And we're gonna be talking about that throughout the series. Now, I think there's a few ways we can illustrate that the soul and body are united. Some serious ways and some light-hearted ways, okay? And I thought we could just unpack it in a light way first. Quick experiment with all of us. For just a moment, imagine you are really hungry. I mean, just like really hungry. The type of hungry where whatever you think about, you're like, that sounds good, I would eat that. You ever been that hungry? I like to cycle, and that's called bonking. It's where you're so out of juice that like Cheerios dry sounds delicious, which is also true of my 8-year-old son. But imagine you're that hungry. Now just imagine your favorite food is just available to you. Ruth Chris Steakhouse, filet mignon, medium rare, grill marks to perfection, okay? Just imagine that in your brain for a moment. And now imagine your favorite beverage. So tasty. I'll let you fill in the gap of what your favorite beverage might be. Your favorite dessert. For me, it's my wife's French silk pie. Just imagine all of that, okay? Can you picture it? You picturing your favorite thing? Now slice open your brain. Would we find it in there? We would not. If you slice into your brain right now, you would not actually find a filet in there, which means your brain has the capacity to picture something immaterial, which means there's something going on inside of you. Okay? Very, very important. But how about this? Is anybody in the room salivating right now? Is anybody actually, in first service, people were far more hungry than this service. They're like, I'm very hungry right now, I'm salivating. That is so interesting. Our bodies, our minds have the ability to picture something immaterial, and then our physical bodies can actually respond. We can think about this in so many ways, and I think at a simple level, it's a small experiment that helps us see that the immaterial and the material are connected. Let's get a little more serious. For many of us, our biggest regret in our lives, or the source of the most pain, the deepest wounds in our lives, are connected to something that happened to our physical body, and yet the pain exists deep within our souls. If you've been the victim of some type of physical abuse, or if you carry with you guilt and shame from something that happened in the past, something that you did or was done to you with your body, you might not have a wound on this physical structure, but there's a wound deep inside of you, a wound on your soul. Because the physical and the spiritual, they're united. Your soul and your body, well, they're united. And this is exactly what the Apostle Paul describes next in 1 Corinthians 6. He's letting us know, in the grand scheme of things, there is not good evidence to separate those two. That's a form of Gnosticism that will eventually be described as death. Look at what he says back in 1 Corinthians 6. I have the right to do anything you say, but not everything is beneficial. I have the right to do anything, but I will not be mastered by anything. Those are two arguments that we've already looked at. Verse 13 now. Yeah, but you say food for the stomach, stomach for the food. God will destroy them both. Point being, whatever I do with my body doesn't really matter at all, right? Paul corrects that. He says, the body, however, is not meant for sexual immorality. He brings that into the picture. They were treating their sex life like their food life, as if it were just something that the body could do without any repercussions, without it actually being connected to the soul. He clears that up. He says, the body, however, is not meant for sexual immorality, but for the Lord, and the Lord for the body. By his power, God raised the Lord from the dead, and he will raise us also. Paul throws a grenade on the idea that our bodies and souls are separate. And he uses Jesus as a picture of this. The incarnation when Jesus arrived was bodily. The crucifixion when Jesus died on the cross, it was bodily. The resurrection of Jesus when he was raised to life, it was bodily. The body absolutely matters. There is not good evidence, scientifically or biblically, to think that there's this separation between soul and body. So this brings us to our fourth position, which is this: my body belongs to God, it's for him, and it is for imaging him. Let's unpack this. I want to show you this in the Bible, but first let's just talk about where we've been. Let me just summarize. The fact that our body is intricately designed with limits and all, the fact that we have a body and soul operating together, the fact that death is our greatest enemy, separating these two things, and the fact that our bodies desire pleasure, and pleasure can be experienced, all points to a reality that maybe our bodies don't belong to us, but they were designed for a very specific purpose that we should align with to experience peace. And this is exactly what we see, and we should not be surprised by it, in Genesis chapter 1. So let's turn there now. In Genesis chapter 1, we see this. Then God said, let us make mankind in our image. Man, we could go so deep in that. Let us, that's plural, but make is singular, as if there's plurality and singularity in creation. That's another topic for a different day on the Trinity. Let us make mankind in our image. By the way, I just can't help myself. Trinity is going to be oh so important to our gender discussions in week 3. Make sure you're back for that. In our image, in our likeness, so that they may rule over the fish in the sea, and the birds in the sky, over the livestock and all the wild animals, over all the creatures that move along the ground. So they have something to do in cultivating the earth. Verse 27, so God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them. So over and over again, image, likeness, image. God blessed them and said to them, be fruitful. By the way, this fruitfulness, what they were to do to fill the earth and cultivate the earth and steward the earth, this is all before sin enters into the picture in Genesis chapter 3. This is before the fall, as we summarize that moment. Be fruitful and increase in number, fill the earth and subdue it, rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky and over every living creature that moves on the ground. Here's what I want to say about this. There's so much that we could say, but the book of Genesis is designed to give us an origin story that would fly in the face of all origin stories in the ancient Near East, Mesopotamia. There were other origin stories. This was oh so different. We'll unpack that in this series, but I just do want to say this. Every religion, and even most kingdoms of the day and throughout history, had an image or an idol of their god, king, or ruler. Some sort of statue, big or small, some type of icon, some type of trophy that really would represent the ruler or king or God. But more than just represent, it would also be a reminder of their presence, that they were there, that they were with you. Now, all through the Bible, from start to finish, we see that God is not to be made into an idol, not to be made into an image or an icon or a statue. Why? Because there is already a group of some ones who image him beautifully. Us. And no statue or trophy or icon or image or idol can accurately help people see who God is more than his creation, you and I. And so now there are billions of people walking the face of the earth who have this capacity to image him. And when we stare eyeball to eyeball with somebody else, there's something beautiful and so precious about them because of this. They are image bearers. Now, we've got to go a little bit deeper, get a little bit nerdy. You guys still with me? It's a tough call. I know, it's January. It's tough. It's snowy. You're like, I'm still hungry. I'm going to Ruth Chris after this. Theologians and thinkers and scholars have talked at length over the centuries about what it means to image God. And there really are 3 categories with a light fourth that are trying to describe what it means to image God. I want to take you through those views quickly because it is very important. There's the substantive view, the relational view, the functional view, and then way down the line, the physical view. Let me go back through them. I don't know if I can remember the order, but the physical view, I don't think holds water for very long. The physical view is that image is we actually look physically what God looks like physically. But I don't think that adds up, and here's why. It's pretty simple. We just see over and over again that God does not have a body, a physical body. I mean, Jesus showed up bodily, but God the Father, the first person of the Trinity, does not have physical features. And so image must mean something different. So I think that one is quickly passed aside as really not being adequate to describe being made in the image of God, which brings us back to the functional one. I think that was next in my order. The functional one is this. It's the idea that being made in the image of God is about what we do, what he's commissioned us to do, to rule, to steward the earth, to cultivate it, to sort of reign with dominion over it. Okay, then there's a relational view that says being made in the image of God is really about being relational, being able to relate to God and being able to relate to others. And then the first one that we talked about, the substantive view, is really this idea that we have some substance about us or capacity about us that separates us from the rest of creation. So just take dolphins, for example. I'll explain this with dolphins. Dolphins are very smart, all right? Dolphins are very smart. They communicate. I think they feel things as well. But the substantive view says we're different than dolphins in that we have some capacities. Like dolphins haven't put a member of their species on the moon yet, right? Or faked everybody into thinking that has happened. Just kidding. Don't think about that very long. Back to the topic at hand. But the substantive view is that we're different than dolphins because we have these capacities that they don't have. Now, as we look at all of those options, they all sort of have some truth to them, but they sort of all start to fall short because what if someone doesn't have certain mental faculties or capacities? Does that mean they bear the image of God less? Well, no. Like a child or someone who's disabled or someone who experienced an accident who used to have it but doesn't have it anymore, are they less of an image bearer? I'd say no. What about the relational approach? What if someone doesn't want to relate to God? What if someone's walked away from God? Are they still an image bearer? Is there still something about them that is bearing the image of God? Well, we would say, yeah. Well, then the relational view has some holes in it. What about the functional view? What if someone doesn't want to rule or lead or steward the earth the way God wants, to do as he desires, the commission of Genesis 1 to reign and have dominion and cultivate the earth his way, drawing other people in to God? If they don't want that, does that mean they're less of an image bearer? We already dealt with the physical one briefly. So as we put all this together, I think we've got to find a way to talk about all of them, but also in a way that maintains image bearing for people that don't have those capacities in one of those areas. So I'll just say it like this. It's the best I know how to say it. Being created in the image of God means we are responsible. We are capable of being responsible. That's core to this. Responsible to relationally. So the relational aspect matters, but someone who doesn't want to be in a relationship with God still is responsible. They still are an image bearer as they have the capability of being responsible to relationally represent him. And when we do, we have the most peace possible. This is what we were made for. The body is for the Lord. It's for imaging him. So if we just take those 3 R's and put them together, responsible, relational, representatives, I'll add one more to help it really sink in, who reflect him, which is kind of at the idea of image. Each day when I drive into the office or leave my home, I drive past this view. Well, not every day. I don't drive past this every day. Sometimes inversion sets in. But some days I see this Utah Lake, the Wasatch Front, Temp. It's beautiful. And what you see in a picture like this is you see a reflection of the main thing. It's not the main thing, but it's a picture of it. A picture that helps us. It's not final in telling us everything we need to know, but we get this reflection that helps us understand what's happening. And in a similar way, not a perfect way, but in a similar way, when we live as responsible, relational representatives, we begin to be people who reflect God in this earth. Not a statue, an idol, or an icon, but people who let other people know God is present with us here and now. Now, living out of step with this, the Apostle Paul will go on to explain, will lead to more chaos. Living in step leads to peace. Living out of step leads to chaos. Look at what he says back in 1 Corinthians 6. He says, do you not know that your bodies are members of Christ himself? Your bodies, he's still on this topic. It's not Gnosticism, and your body's not a playground. It's a member. It's united with Jesus. Members of Christ himself. Shall I then take the members of Christ and unite them with a prostitute? Never. Do you not know that he who unites himself with a prostitute is one with her in body? For it is said the two will become one flesh. I don't think it should shock us that so much of the conversation, disagreement, and hostility has to do with sexuality in this issue, because in the area of sexuality, it's a place where our physical bodies and our souls are oh so connected. So of course it would make sense that that would be the battleground of some of these issues and what it means to image God. It was that way 2,000 years ago. He says, but whoever is united with the Lord is one with him in spirit. Flee from sexual immorality. All other sins a person commits are outside the body, but whoever sins sexually sins against their own body. He's saying your body, and then he's gonna say, and you, and your body, and you. He's putting it all together for us. Do you not know that your bodies are temples of the Holy Spirit who is in you, whom you have received from God? God lives in you the moment you trust him. Your body matters. He says, you are not your own. You were bought at a price. Therefore, honor God with your body. We will come back to this over the next 3 weeks and make sense of it some more. But I just want to say, your body and soul, not disconnected, united in this life, both for Jesus. So the human being is united material and immaterial creation, able to image God, be filled with the Spirit of God, and cultivate the earth with God. We are responsible, relational representatives who reflect. Those 4 R's have been so helpful in bringing clarity to my life. And our bodies are absolutely crucial for each of those items. Our bodies really are for loving God and for loving others. Upon death, they are separated only to be reunited. We'll talk about it in week 4 of this series, what happens next to our bodies. So, what's the pitfall of this view? I said there's a pitfall to each. I think the pitfall to this view is this. We have to bow before it. We have to submit to it. We have to say no to some things and repent of the things that are opposite of it. And I get it. That can be very challenging. That can be very hard. But at the end of the day, the doctrine of humanity tells us this. We are not just juicy robots. We are not just flesh machines. We are not animals. We are not just sexual beings. We are not just economic people with functions to perform. We are not just pawns in the universe. We are image bearers who can relationally represent God, responsible to him. Now, as we come to the end of this, I just want to ask you a question. How do you feel about your body? How do you feel about your body? For many of us, we grew up in cultures, perhaps religious cultures, where we thought body was always bad, always wrong. We dealt with shame and guilt. Or perhaps we've been treating the body like a playground. Perhaps it's been leading to some pain. Perhaps we're unhappy with our bodies and we're just trying to change them or get away from them. Or maybe worshiping them to get them to be exactly the way we would like them to be. Perhaps we're obsessed with them. But what I want for us today is just to experience some peace from knowing that there is a better story for our bodies. The Bible begins with created human bodies. The Bible ends with redeemed and glorified and renewed human bodies. But here we are living in the middle of the story. What story will you live out with your body? I'm convinced that the story of imaging God and honoring him with your body will lead to peace. In Psalm 139, the psalmist talks about his body with such beauty, such poetic peace. I want to read this for us and we'll sing. He says, for you created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am fearfully and I am wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in the secret place, when I was woven together in the depths of the earth. Your eyes saw my unformed body. All the days ordained for me were written in your book before one of them came to be. How precious to me are your thoughts, God. How vast is the sum of them. When your thoughts about your body align with God's thoughts about your body, it will lead to peace. And that's where we're headed in this series. So let me just say it like this. The human body is not a burden to bear. It's not a playground to explore. It's not a toy to play with. It's not a waste of space. It's not a trophy on a shelf. And it's not a collection of organs to exhaust, but a sacred resource to manage or to steward God's way. And I would just love for you to remind yourself of that or embrace that for the first time today. What that means is that we don't worship our bodies, we don't neglect our bodies, we don't hate our bodies, we don't harm our bodies, we don't treat them as invaluable. We value them appropriately. So we nourish them, we discipline them, we enjoy them, we guide them, we direct them, we rest them, we gift them to our spouse if we're married, and we glorify God with them. We're going to talk about exactly how to do that next week. But here's our bottom line today. Would you be at peace with your body? Because you're at peace with the God who made it. Let me pray for us, and we'll sing. Jesus, this is a unique topic for many of us. Not unique in the sense that we're not familiar with our bodies, but unique in actually exploring what that means to be an embodied creation of yours. I just pray today you'd give us the wisdom, the grace, the love, and the truth we need to take our next step into this material, into what you've revealed to us in the Bible, so that we might pursue peace. Here we sit with our physical bodies, hearing these words with physical features, singing to you with lungs and with breath and with lips that are physical as well. It's all part of life with you, soul and body together. Would you help us bow the knee to you and see the beauty, the majesty, and the peace that comes from imaging you as we were designed to do. Be with us over the next few weeks as a church as we deal with this stuff. It's in your name, Jesus, we pray. Amen.
Thank you so much for joining us for today's message and trusting us with your time. If you'd like to connect with one of our pastors or staff, you can easily do that by visiting smccutah.org/connect. When you fill out that quick form, they will get back to you within a few days and be able to connect with you. As well, if you'd like to know more about taking a next step at SMCC, you can easily look at what next steps we have by visiting smccutah.org/next steps. And lastly, if you found today's message both hopeful and helpful, I would encourage you to do maybe one of two things. First, you can share this message with someone that would find it helpful. And you can also choose to partner with us financially so that more people can see messages like this. You can find more information on what that looks like by visiting smccutah.org/give. Again, thank you for joining us today, and I hope to see you at one of our locations soon.